with that. And if you haven't already, we're please asking you to enter your name, your full name, first and last, what college you're from and what position you hold at that college into the chat. If you are from Seattle, please be specific as to what area in Seattle you are. This is helpful for me if I need to contact you with updated information, those kinds of things, and for attendance purposes. As with all of the other trainings, we will be keeping a parking lot for questions that may need further investigation. I am compiling those questions and working with support analysts and making sure that we get those answers. And then we'll be posting those questions and answers within the Canvas course. Also within the Canvas course will be a link to this WebEx recording for your review. And all of the materials that we'll be looking at today are found within the Reference Center also. So a little clarification regarding the Canvas course and being able to access that link. The link will be placed into the last section of your course in additional resources. And if you have not gone through the course, then that section will not be unlocked for you. So it's imperative that you go through that course to be able to reach that link. We also ask that if you're not speaking to please mute yourself, as background noises, people chewing their breakfast and dogs barking or road construction, etc., can be quite distracting. However, with that being said, please do not hesitate to unmute to ask any questions at all. No need to wait to ask a question. If you have one, go ahead and ask that question and we'll answer it the best that we can. And again, if for some reason I don't have the answer, I will make sure to get that answered to you. So I see in the chat here a question I have. My team on this call, is this an appropriate training for them? Thought it might be an introductory to using HCM. HCM as a whole, this is not an introductory to this. We're going to be looking at manager self-service and using those fluid tiles to create a delegation and to accept a delegation. So hopefully that answers your question. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Is everyone able to see my screen for manager self-service?
Ma'am.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Casey. I have my friend and coworker, Casey, who is co-hosting with me today. Someone needs to mute themselves, please. Thank you. And she'll be making sure that any questions or inquiries regarding these materials will be put into the parking lot if needed. So thank you for your assistance, Casey. I appreciate you. So today this is a very, it's a pretty basic process, and it's laid out in a very functional way as far as being intuitive and user-friendly. And we're going to be using the fluid tiles to create a delegation and to go back and accept a delegation. And so we're looking at delegating things like, I may come in as a supervisor and I'm approving pay, or I'm approving overtime, rather. I'm approving their time. I'm approving absences, those kinds of things. But if for some reason I needed to step away from that responsibility for whatever reason, be it vacation or something else, I can delegate that those approvals to another person. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to create a delegation where I'm going to assign a delegation to someone, and then I'm going to show you what the screens look like when that person comes back in to either accept or reject that request, that delegation request. So I know we have an hour scheduled for this, and I'm I'm sure we won't need more than that, depending on what type of questions or support you might need afterwards. So let's go ahead and get started. So delegation is basically two different steps. One is creating the delegation request, and the other one is accepting the delegation request, rather. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that we are in Manager Self-Service. My landing page for Manager Self-Service, because I'm in a training development environment, may look a little different to you. This is based on your role permissions and what you have access to and what you don't have access to. So in Manager Self-Service, I'm going to choose the Delegations tile. And from there, we'll be able to see that these three tiles display: create a delegation request, my delegates, and my delegated authorities. And for this example, of course, we're going to create one, so we'll choose that tile. And from here, we have a couple of choices. You can see that the steps are outlined above, and it's just a matter of doing a step, choosing next, moving on to the next step, those kinds of things. So it's pretty straightforward. And I have found that working with any process that uses the fluid tiles, you'll see that the way it's set out up on the screen, rather, is really intuitive. You may be working with fluid tiles in another area where on the left navigation is in sequential order what the tasks you may be requested to do in order to finish that process. So I found working with tiles to be quite simple, really. So one of the first steps that we want to confirm and add as part of our delegation request to another person is what dates. So we can choose a start date. You can either type in the start date or use the calendar icon and choose from there. And then choosing an end date. Now, you can leave the end date blank, and this is just open-ended, and this just forever and ever if you'd like. However, if you want to come back and stop that delegation after leaving this blank, that's an option also. But if you know for a fact that I need Casey, for instance, to come in and I want to request of her these delegated processes, and I need her to do it for a 2-week span, then that's something that I can look at. So for the sake of example, that's what I'll do. I'll go ahead and say, well, we want Casey to be able to come in and do some of the work that as a supervisor or manager I would normally do. And can we please mute ourselves? Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to say that I would like for Casey to be responsible for these actions from the 14th, and then I'll go ahead and choose it to the 31st. Well, maybe I'm on vacation and I need her to be able to cover that and approve time, etc. For the comments, it is a required field to put some kind of notes in the comments. Off the top of my head, I don't know if there is a character cap as far as how much information you can put in here. That's probably something that I should find out for you. I think it's pretty open though. So for the sake of an example, I'll just put in notes. So we've done that first step. So I'm just going to choose the next button. And now we're going to move on to who are we delegating. So in this area, I'm going to choose Add Delegate. And this is the part where you should know what that supervisor's user ID is. If you don't, however, you can go ahead and choose the magnifying glass to get a listing. Of course, my listing is going to look different. And I already have a user ID that I'm going to use. So you can either take it off the search list or you can just enter the user ID. And that's what I'll do right now is just enter the user ID. Okay. And then I'm going to select done. And we see that that person's been added. Okay. So we move on to the next step. And this is where we're going to decide for this person, well, what do I need them to cover? And we have a number of different options. So we can select all of these options and just say, you know what? I'm not going to be around for any of this. I need them to be able to do everything that I would normally do, and I can select all for that. Or I can look at, well, here's the different things that I want them to be able to approve. And here's the different things that I want them to be able to just initiate. Or maybe I want the listing to be everything like it is here. So we can look at what's available for all the options, just approve options, or just initiate options rather. Sorry about that. I'm going to look at all, and because I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks, and to make it easier for this example, I can go through and just check a few things. Okay, maybe I want this person to be able to work with an absence cancellation. Maybe I need this person to be able to approve overtime, and there may be a few things. But for this example, I'm going to go ahead and select all, and then choose next. So this gives us an option to review what we are asking this person to either accept or reject. So we have the date, start date and end date. And so for these 2.5 weeks, I would like this person to be able to finish all of these transactions. Remember, I chose all of them. So all of these transactions, or whichever transactions that you choose, will be added to this list, and that's what you'll see. So if I've reviewed this and I'm okay with all of that, then I would go ahead and choose submit. If I want to make some changes, I can go back and make some changes. It's pretty straightforward. So we reviewed that, we're very happy with that, and we're going to submit that. Now, what happens from this point is that that person who is getting the request, they're going to receive an email notification saying, hey, you've got some things happening here that you need to address, and they'll be able to come in and look at that. And we'll get to that in just one moment. One other thing that I wanted to point out to you is the My Delegates tile. And this is going to show you, this is some past work that's been done in this training environment. This is going to show you, excuse me, I'm trying not to choke, had to get a drink of water. This is going to show you what you already have set up, who is already a delegate, what time frames you had them in, who they are, what have you asked for them to take care of, and whether or not it's been submitted. Okay, so we can also, this is what's active. We can also look at any of our delegates that have accepted. I don't have any there. Any that have ended. Any delegates that have been rejected would show up. Any delegates that I have revoked, meaning I have taken that back from them. This person we've revoked, and I'll show you that in just a second. And anything that we've submitted. So looking at the submissions, we can see that we submitted for this person. We've created this request for this person, and these are all the different transactions that we've asked this person to do. Now, if I wanted to come back in and revoke this, maybe I had left that end date open, maybe my plans got canceled and I no longer need Dakota to do this for me, or Casey, or whoever I've asked to do this for me, then I can come back in and revoke this by choosing which one and then just choosing revoke. It asks me, are you sure you want to do that? And I can say yes, and it will take it off the list, and it's a done deal, you're done. Okay, so before we move into what the other person who is receiving this will look at, are there any questions? Do you feel this is really pretty straightforward? Goes pretty quickly, doesn't it?
Yes, thanks, Corinne.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So we're going to look at how that's going to be rejected. The person who gets the note.
We do have one question, Corinne. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Great, no problem, no problem.
Ask, how would it be rejected? Can the person you are asking to delegate, reject it?
Absolutely, and that's what we're going to look at next. This list for my delegates will show how many of those requests have either been accepted or they've ended due to their end dates, or they've been rejected, or we may have gone in and revoked. So this just gives you a review of all the work you've done in creating a delegation request and what has happened since then. So you just have record of what's going on. But now we're going to go ahead and look at, can you see my PowerPoint page, Casey?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to go ahead and look at accepting a delegation request. And the reason why we're looking at it this way is because I don't have that request yet to act on. And so I'm just going to show you the screenshots this way. So let's take a look at that. Okay. Are there any other questions before we get going? We're going to get through this in record time.
Maybe I missed this, but
Yeah.
is there a number of delegates, like a cap of number of delegates that you're allowed to have? And
You know what?
secondly,
That's a really,
there-
really good question. I don't think that there is. I would feel more comfortable being able to confirm that for you, and maybe Casey can put a note in the parking lot for me, but I don't think there is. You may want one person to do just a couple of different transactions and have somebody else do some other transactions, correct? Or maybe
Right.
you want to delegate authority to one person for 1 week of your 2-week absence, and then somebody else for the second week. So those kinds of things you can do, yes. But as far as how many people can I put in the same request, that's a really good question, and I'll find out for you.
Okay. And then my second question is there a time limit? So like some of our teams have, they work together in tandem, and some of our folks are not going to have full access because we don't want them to.
Correct.
So can somebody make somebody a delegate on very specific activities, essentially indefinitely, without it affecting anything?
You can leave that end date open.
Right. That's not going to affect anything in the end.
I'm really wanting to understand what you mean by affecting anything in the end.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't want it to like come back and bite them in the end where it changes their security somehow, or it becomes a problem later on down the road. As long as that's not actually a thing, then I think we're good. I'm trying to cover all the bases. Well, I've got you on
Okay.
the line.
I understand. I don't think that is going to mess anything up or do anything. If they are a supervisor and their security permissions are set up as such, that shouldn't be an issue. I do see a note here from Brian though, and I stand corrected, and thank you, Brian, that you can only delegate to one person. So hopefully that'll answer your other question, but no, an open-ended.
One person per activity or one person at a time?
One person at a time, it looks like.
Okay.
So I misspoke. But, out of curiosity, I'd like to look into that a little bit more. I think if you split the dates, perhaps, maybe if you use the same dates, I think Brian left. So I'm still going to keep that in the parking lot and make sure that I get some clarification on that. And I'll add that to the Canvas course, just so we know that we're all on the same page. But those are really good questions.
Thank you.
Did you have any other questions?
Hey, Ms. Green.
Oh, you're there. Hi, Brian.
Yeah, I just had to call in. I got a mic problem, so it just took me a while to call in.
Okay. So, Brian, question. We can only delegate to one person at a time, but I can split that up between a number of other people dependent on the dates, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's
instead
just
of
like,
having...
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's just like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, there's no backup approval, right? Like you can't donate like time and labor to two people at the same time to be delegates, right? Only one person at a time can be a delegate for an activity. But yes, Kareem, you can break it up between dates.
Okay, and I can also break it up between transactions, correct? So I can have Mary Jo come in and do A, B, and C, and then I can have Casey come in for the same date frame and do different transactions, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So basically what you're saying is you cannot have the more than one person doing the same transactions within the same date time.
That's you said it a lot better, but yes, ma'am, that's it.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Well, that's great. I'm glad we got that clarified. Any other questions? Thank you, Brian.
This is Casey. There's one in the chat.
Okie dokie.
Kurt would like to know a similar question. Who shows up on the drop-down list from which you selected Dakota, and do they have to be in my department?
Ooh, really good list. That's a really good list. I'm not sure if it's all supervisors that will show on that list or all employees. I believe it's all employees.
100% correct. All employees. So
Thank
that is
you.
one of the downfalls. All employees will show on that list. So you can accidentally select all employees will show on the list. So that is one of the setbacks. Yes, ma'am.
It's better if you already know who that other person's going to be, if they're in a supervisor position, I think it would be safe to assume that their role permissions are set up and that shouldn't be an issue. And to know their EMPL ID, that's going to cut through any of that confusion and not having to scroll through a bazillion other people to get to the person that you need. So knowing that EMPL ID for the person that you're delegating to will be most helpful. Any other questions?
Another comment in the chat from Bob.
Okay.
He says, it would be helpful to have more than one delegate in case the primary becomes ill, etc. What would occur in that situation where I have already delegated and left, and then the backup cannot do it?
That's a great question, and that's something to think about in regards to your business process, right? So I'm wondering if the person who is unable to do it because they're in a supervisory role, if they could pass that delegation along, or or create a new request for yet another person to pass it along, rather, if the person who initiated the request is not available to do so. So, Brian, would that work if I delegate put a request of delegation into Casey? She accepts it. Come to find out she's not able to do that. I'm unavailable. She would then be able to put in a delegation request to another supervisor, correct? And pass it on that way?
Ms. Corrine, and that's definitely a great scenario. We would have to test that. I don't know if you can delegate a delegation. I know what we are doing now is administrators can always reroute that to somebody else, or administrators can approve it. So when those situations happening now live in production, the time and labor or leave administration at each college is doing whatever their best business practice is, either reaching out to that person's supervisor or going in and approving it themselves. Each colleges are doing different things, but there is a way to get that time and leave approved, because that's mostly what's being delegated at this time.
So let's say with that scenario that I'm not able to do it, but I know I had accepted it and I had planned on doing it, and now, I can't, family emergency. I can create a new delegation request and pass it on that way, correct?
Well, Ms. Corinne, that's what I was saying. That's the one that I would have to test. I believe
okay.
I believe you could do it, but I think we're going to have to test that one. I haven't tested that scenario quite yet.
Okay. These are great questions. I'm glad they're coming up.
Casey, I put that in the parking lot.
Thank you so much.
And we do have another.
Okay.
The changes made to the delegates take effect on same day, or is it an overnight update process? Annie.
Oh, that, I don't know. I'm going to just put it out there. I don't know that. They should receive, they should receive it. I think they received the notice that there is a request out there the same day. But I'm guessing, Brian, do you know?
It's right away. So it all
It's
depends on when, right away. So you create the delegation and you put the start date of the delegation. So if you pick a delegation, you put today's date, and the system is right, it's going to send a notification to the person that you select, letting them know that there's a delegation request out there for them to either approve or deny. So the person you're delegating to has to accept it, right, to make the delegation go through. Once they do that, it's effective.
great.
It's right away.
Good to know. Thank you so much. All right. Any other questions before we get to accepting that delegation request?
Sorry, Ms. Green.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go all the way to accepting it already, so I apologize.
No. Don't be sorry at all. Some great questions. I'm glad we've got some good answers and something to look at a little more closely. That's wonderful. I welcome that. All right. So let's say you've received the notice saying that this request is out there and you are able to now go in and decide as to whether or not you're able to fulfill that request. So in doing that, we would look at my delegated authorities, and the list that will come up for you will show as to all the different transactions that was included in the request, who the request came from, what the time frame is for that, and that it has been submitted. So you would come in and you would look at the tab submitted, and you have the opportunity to either accept that delegation request or to reject it. So if you accept it, a message will come up. You'll select yes. Another message will come up saying confirming the submission of the delegation request, and you can select accept it and review the delegated roles, the start date, and the status of that. And that's all there is to it. You can come in here and say, oh, I've got this request coming through, so I'm going to come through and look at what it is. I can either accept it or reject it. If I reject it, it's my understanding that gets kicked back to the delegator, the originator of the request, and then that person will have to either choose someone else or work it out. You know, it's obviously dependent on what the reasoning was behind the reject. And guess what, folks? In a nutshell, that's creating a delegation request and accepting it. Very quick, very user-friendly, laid out when using the tiles, and just going through the steps one by one. It shows you the 4 steps for creating that and being able to come in and accept and reject that as the person who that request was put to. So just as a review, yes.
Yeah, there's a question from Amy Jo asking, can we put a reason why you reject it?
I don't have that screen up in front of me. I'd have to look at that screen for sure. The reason why I showed you these screens this way is because I didn't have that submitted screen to get to. So I'd have to look at that.
I'll put it in the parking lot.
Thank you so much. It would make sense, though, to have a reason, right, to be able to communicate via this request. So I'll double check that. Any other questions? Pretty straightforward. Any comments? I think we all need more coffee today. It's only Tuesday. Brian, is there anything that you would like to add to this that I may have unfortunately missed?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I'm giving you some of your time back unless you have any other questions. I think this does pose some questions regarding your business process. How do you want for this to play out as far as who is delegating and requesting for these transactions to be done? What constitutes a formal request for this and what doesn't? I would think that any kind of absence where someone else has to take those responsibilities, you would come through and do this, obviously, but for other things, if for instance, if I'm only going to be gone a couple of days and it doesn't fall within, say, a pay period or something like that, or if I know that someone's made a request for an absence and I'm going to be back the day after tomorrow, I may not feel the need to delegate that. I may be able to come in and take care of that. Again, that's business process that you'll have to talk about. And Brian, do you have any suggestions as far as a timeline? If I know I'm only gone for a day or two, you can come back and take care of those things that need to be approved, and it's only with, you know, a day or two, that's fine, but anything longer than that perhaps should be delegated to someone else. Do you have any input on that?
Yeah, I think most of the time, as long as it get approved by the pay period cutoff, then
Right.
that way it could get picked up for that pay period. Also, you know, PeopleSoft employee self-service is fluid, so it could be accessed from any device, cell phone, laptop. So, I mean, yeah, I think we can always get it approved, and I think people got more time to approve it if they need it. It's like I said, as long as it get approved before a pay period cutoff, so it can be processed with the correct payroll.
I think that's the biggest time frame that needs to be looked at, correct? Making sure that that doesn't fall within payroll cutoff.
Yes, ma'am. And
Because
most colleges
then we
send out
have problems
quite
if something wasn't approved and it gets pushed to payroll. Then when you come back, you're going to have someone knocking on your door, right?
Yes, ma'am. We have colleges sending out quite a few reminders, letting people know when there's time out there, leaves that needs to be approved. We can create queries. So we are definitely trying to help colleges stay on top of that. But that, you're right, that is a big one. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I see another question here from Jessica. I was a few minutes late. Did we cover the enter time off request? And that's not what we're covering today, Jessica. We're looking at delegating transactions in our absence for managers. So as a quick example,
Is there going to be another training? Because the training was titled Employee and Manager Self-Service. So is there going to be another training for employee self-service specifically then?
so what I have here is that, oh, for employees to come in, but it's not about entering time or anything like that. So your question, will we have a standalone for employee self-service?
Yeah, because I
Okay.
guess for me, based on the title of this ILT, I thought we would be
Right.
covering, like, you know, at least for the managers who are on this call, like what employee self-service is as well as manager self-service.
No, those
so
were the prereqs for this particular
Sure.
one, but I see the need for employee self-service. So that's definitely, Casey, if you could please make a note. I'll definitely speak with the training team around that because I agree with you. I think something needs to be touched on there. I can't give you a date or anything right now on that,
Sure.
but no, what we're
Well, and
looking
I
at
don't,
just
and
for
I,
today was delegations and approvals.
yeah, and I don't know that it needs to be like a ILT for like the entire, every single person who's ever going to use the system. I think if it's just the supervisors, that would be helpful if they have a good understanding of employee self-service so that they can then assist their employees.
Absolutely. And I would highly recommend that they can peruse the employee self-service Canvas course if they would like. And we also have a section in the reference center for self-service, employee self-service, manager self-service, etc. And there's training documents in there too. So there are some resources out there, but entering time, sometimes there's some hiccups in there. And so I will definitely take your suggestion, if that's what I'm hearing, and see what we can do about getting something out there a little more hands-on with that. But there's a
Thank you
number of
so
materials
much.
out there. Sure, sure. Any other questions?
Hi, Crane. This is Rosemary at Highline.
Hi,
Uh,
Rosemary from Highline.
How's it going?
It's going well. How about you?
Oh, it's moving fast like a freight train. You know this. So
I like you, Rosemary.
thank you. Likewise. So I have a question, and it might be outside of this scope because I think I heard something about this being more focused towards time entry or something. But is this delegation process work the same in other pillars for folks that are approvers in other capacities? I'm thinking about travel and expense or requisitions, POs. And again, this might be outside because I know it's a different pillar and things, but I'm just wondering if the process to delegate is the same or if that process exists in those other modules and pillars.
No, this one is primarily out of HCM, and it has to do with time and pay.
Okay,
Now,
sounds
is
good.
the process the same for delegating someone out of the finance pillar who may be approving different things? No,
No? Okay.
no.
I'll have to look for the instructions for those. Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Sure, sure. So please take full advantage of the Canvas courses and of the Reference Center and you know, on your own time can peruse those training documents in there, the QRGs, there's links to training videos, a wealth of resources there. So if you're looking for something in particular before a training comes up or outside of the training like this, she was interested in some approval processes for different areas, meaning finance and those kinds of things. All of that information is in there. And if you still can't find what you're looking for, let us know. Let us know that you're looking for something specific. And if we don't have it for some reason, the training team will get together and look at the viability of putting something like that together. So we're always updating and creating new information that's put out there all the time. So continue to check back. Okay.
Maureen, we have one more question.
Yeah. Okay.
Megan would like to know, she says, will we be shown as an admin how to reassign a delegation that was approved and then couldn't be done due to unexpected illness, etc.?
I think there's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can either revoke that delegation from that person and create a new delegation request. So you're ending that delegation request by revoking it from the first person, and then selecting creating rather a new delegation request for the second person in line that you would like to have that done. I hope I answered that question. Is that what you were looking for? Does that make sense?
Megan is asking if you could show her how to do that on the HR side.
Let me see if I can. Hold on one second. Oop, let me get out of here. Oh, there we go. Okay. So let's say, for instance, that I come to my delegates. And again, this is just a review of everything that we're doing, right? But this is what I have active. And I have Sam who's going to do these things. And Sam can no longer.
Karina, do you know that your screen is not shared?
Oh, I do not. Thank you so much. I'm terribly sorry. I'm just cruising along here. Hold on one second.
That's what I'm here for.
Ah, so good. Oh. Okay, let's try it now. Now, there we go. How's that?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so if I go back as a supervisor, let's say I've had Casey, I've put the request out to her, and Casey is Sam right now. I'm thinking about Casey, so I'm using her as an example. Let's say that for Sam, we've put this, let me look under submitted. For Sam, we've submitted this request to Sam. We want Sam to be able to take care of these things during this time frame for us. Sam has come back, and we see under rejected, we don't see it here now, but we would see that it was rejected here. So because it was rejected, one of the questions I would have, and I don't have that right in front of me, as to whether or not that's the end of the road, or if I would need to go in and to my submitted and actually revoke that. And that's something that I'll look into. That's an excellent question. However, if for whatever reason I do need to revoke, then I would come in and I would just check which one, choose revoke. You sure you want to do that? Yes, I do. And this just takes Sam out of the picture. Then what I would do is come back and create a new delegation request for the next person in line who may be able to do that for me. Does that make sense? And this process is the same as the initial one.
Follow up there. But if you are logged in as yourself as a manager in this example, how do I go in as an HR individual and do these items on behalf of a supervisor?
Oh. On behalf of a supervisor. I don't know that that would make, is this a question from Megan?
It is.
Okay, Megan, I'm not sure that that would actually make a difference. I think you may be able to go in and do that for them, and it would be the same way, just as I showed. It's not a different process. But Casey, could you just put a note to me in that parking lot there?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Does that help, Megan? Great questions. I hadn't even thought about. Good stuff.
She still doesn't understand. Sorry.
Megan, do you just want to get on the line and we can walk through this? Do you have audio?
She does not have audio.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to go back to the beginning. So for the manager self-service, so you would need to have access to manager self-service. So when you talk about another HR employee being able to come and do this on behalf of someone else, you would have to make sure that your roles and permissions are also set up so you can access manager self-service. That's the first thing. And maybe that's enough to answer your question, Megan. I'm not sure. So if you have someone within your HR department who does not have access to this due to their roles and permissions, that's going to be your first obstacle. And I'm giving Megan a moment to, okay. Okay, great. If they do have access due to their permissions and the way the roles are set up, then it would be the same process. Again, it would be coming to manager self-service, delegations, create delegation request, and then coming through the same process that we did. So I hope that's helpful for you. But it's all about that security and role, right? It's all about knowing who's who and who has what. And they just won't be able to access this drop-down menu if they don't have that security in place. It just will not be available to them. And I think one reason for that is we don't want everyone to be able to come in and initiate these kinds of things. Working with fluid tiles, there's a number of things that have changed, and there are things now that managers can initiate. So there's quite a bit, and you can look the training materials and see that there's quite a bit that now a manager can actually initiate that perhaps they weren't able to do in the past. It doesn't mean that they can approve. For instance, and this is outside of the scope of what we're talking about, but for instance, a manager can now initiate a termination. They cannot terminate. They can initiate a termination. So there's a couple of things like that that has changed a little bit, but those things are included in the training materials within the reference center. And the Canvas courses for self-service is pretty high level overview. And you start getting into more of the details when you start looking at the quick reference guides and other materials that are in the reference center. So I'm hoping that that answered your question. Okay, any other questions? Comments? Inquiries? Our next training for HCM groups is around time and labor. That's happening this Thursday from 9 to 11:30. We'll be looking at adding a new employment instance, time validation report, and time and labor enrollment. So if there are no other questions or comments and you feel like you know where to find more materials, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm sure we'll see many of you come Thursday. All right, they're leaving. I'm going to stop recording. And